And welcome to another edition of Ducks No Sports. This time, it's my first round preview of the NHL Playoffs as I focus on the Western Conference. All the matchups are in, and it should be interesting with a few new teams to the dance and a few old rivalries renewed. We'll start with the number 1 seed Chicago Blackhawks take on number 8 seed Minnesota Wild. Good to see Minnesota back in the playoffs after a big off season. A lot of signings. Good to see Minnesota back in the playoffs. And, of course, I think that place in Minnesota will be a nut house when they get there for games 3 and 4. But we'll start with Chicago. From start to finish, Chicago's been the best team in the West. Hands down. Best team in the West. You know, Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews, Duncan Keith, Crawford. You know, they've all been clicking all year. You know, won their first, I think, 24 games of the year. Look like they've been an unstoppable force all year round, and they look from top to bottom to be the best team, in my opinion, the best team in all the NHL. And that being said, though, Chicago Blackhawks, of course, after winning their Stanley Cup a couple years ago, I know it hasn't been pretty when they've gone back to the Stanley Cup playoffs. I mean, of course, last year going out early against the Phoenix Coyotes, and team really, you know, isn't, well, say they've won the Stanley Cup, say they're not battle tested, but Chicago Blackhawks, I think it's no lock that they're going to the Stanley Cup, Finals. I mean, with a team who's won a Stanley Cup in the past, but really that core has won a Stanley Cup, but in total, the team hasn't. I mean, with a lot of new third liner and fourth liners, and Chicago to win in the Stanley Cup Finals, they have to depend a lot on Toews and a lot on Kane, and a lot on Duncan Keith. You know, a lot on the core players of this team to get it done. And I think in this series, I don't think we'll be too sweat because they're playing a Minnesota Wild team. Yes, they were one of the hottest teams, you know, about a month ago. One of the hottest teams. Look, playoffs, no doubt, but the last month has not been pretty for Minnesota Wild. Almost slipping all the way out of the playoffs, you know. Didn't play their best hockey going in. I think that will hurt them. Good performance on Saturday night to get it done against the Colorado Avalanche to end their season with going to the playoffs, but for a team to have a chance, you know, Parise and Suter, the two big names that they signed in the offseason, will have to play well. And not only just play well, but play out of their minds good. You know, Parise will have to play as good as he played last year to get the Devils to the Stanley Cup final. Ryan Suter will have to be that number 1 guy, that number 1 defenseman, get it done. Because the Minnesota Wild, to me, this is an uphill battle against the Chicago Blackhawks this series, and I just don't see them getting it done. And I just think with all the star powers I said, Toews and Kane and Duncan Keith, Crawford, I just think will beat out the Minnesota Wild Stars, which is Parise and Suter. And I think the Chicago Blackhawks take out the Minnesota Wild in 5 games. I'll give Minnesota 1 game because I think when they get back to Minnesota, that place will be rocking and crazy like it used to be back when with the playoffs on a regular basis. And I think Minnesota will sneak one out at home. But that's all they're going to get as I believe the Chicago Blackhawks steamroll the Minnesota Wild. Our next matchup, pretty juicy matchup, I will say. Two teams who do not like each other. As the Anaheim Ducks taking on the Detroit Red Wings. Start with the Ducks here. You know, what can you say? The Ducks have been a consistent team all year. Not great, but consistent. You know, Getzlaf, Perry, Bobby Ryan. The core is there to be a good team for years to come, of course. Them all signing extensions over this year, so it looks like this core will be together for years to come. A solid goalie, a solid defense. Do nothing flashy, but they just win games. It's been like that the whole year. And the Anaheim Ducks, they could be a scary team. Not a deep team. That's the only thing that worries me about the Anaheim Ducks. That's when you get past really their first 2 lines. Not much there as far as scoring. Really not much there. They're going to depend a lot on those stars to get it done if they expect to go to the Stanley Cup. But that being said, though, I truly think the Ducks are a dangerous team and could go to a Stanley. They're not a number 2 seed for no reason. They're a very, very good hockey team out there on the West Coast, and I think the Ducks could be a scary team if their goaltender gets hot and their stars come to play. There might be nobody in the West, even Chicago, can beat the Anaheim Ducks, but they're taking on a team in the Detroit Red Wings, who just made their 22nd straight trip to the playoffs. I mean, we got to give ups to that right there. 22 straight trips to the playoffs, but the last couple playoffs have not been good for Detroit Red Wings. Think back to last year, you know, going out early against Nashville. You know, going out early in the second round years before. Not typical to see the Red Wings this time of year. We're used to the Red Wings going to Western Conference Finals and Stanley Cup Finals, but the last couple of years has been everything but that. And I just think Detroit Red Wings to have a chance in this series. Well, I think they got a chance to win this series, but they have a realistic chance to beat the Ducks. Pavel Datsyuk and Henrik Zetterberg will have to play like the old Pavel Datsyuk and Henrik Zetterberg. They're going to play other minds because you can get past those two guys. You know, they got a few good young guys, you know, like Helm or Brandon Smith on defense or Eriksson on defense. You know, Jimmy Howard, you know, really inconsistent. But if you get past really the two star players on the team, Detroit Red Wings, the cupboard's kind of bare. And it's been what it's been the Red Wings the last couple of years. You know, a slow digress down. And I really think this will be a tight series. These are two teams who've met the playoffs in the past. Do not like each other. Think back to 10 years when it was flipped. And Detroit was number 2 seed coming off the Stanley Cup. Anaheim a number 7 seed back when the Mighty Ducks, and they upset them, swept them. And then years later, of course, being in the Western Final, I think, 2007, when the Ducks won the Stanley Cup, of course, the Ducks winning that one. And then the year later, 2 years later, I think Detroit beating Anaheim in the playoffs. Very, very... Two teams. Remember the last time they met in the playoffs? A scrap basically started after every series. I don't think it'll be that extreme this time around. But these are two teams that just don't like each other. Detroit matched up really well against Anaheim. I think they split the season series. But I think it's all said and done. It's going to be star against star because two teams don't have a lot of depth. And I just think the Anaheim Stars will just be a little better than the Detroit Stars. And I like the Anaheim Ducks take out the Detroit Red Wings in 7 games. This will be a long series, but the Anaheim Ducks get the job done. Our next series, the Vancouver Canucks taking on the San Jose Sharks. Should be an interesting one. I mean, we'll start with Vancouver, you know. Surprise, surprise, going into the playoffs, what questions do the Vancouver Canucks have to answer? That's right. Goaltending issues, as Luongo has been in there for a hurt Schneider the last week and has played all right. So that last game against the Oilers last night did not play well that game, but looks like Schneider's going to go game 1, and I think that's the option you have to go. I mean, realistically, why would you keep both these goaltenders around? But that's a story for a different time. But, you know, you see what you have with Luongo, which ended up getting pulled in the playoffs last year. I gotta believe Schneider is your guy. And I think the Vancouver Canucks can be a team. You know, of course, coming off a Stanley Cup appearance a couple seasons ago, I mean, still have it what it takes to get the Stanley Cup. But this year, they won the division, yes. They're number 1 seed, yes, but they haven't been the same Vancouver Canucks this year. You know, Sedins haven't dominated this year. You know, Kessler's been out of the lineup this year with nagging injuries, and I just think the Vancouver Canucks, are they a scary team to win the Stanley Cup? Maybe. Are they that same force that they've been the last couple of years? No, I still believe that playoff loss to the Kings last year still haunts this team a little bit. You know, team has goaltending problems, a defense that's really inconsistent, and scoring the Sedins will have to show. They'll have to come to play for the Vancouver Canucks to have a shot at the Stanley Cup. And we'll be showing you this series against a Sharks team who got rid of a lot of their grit during the season. Of course, Murray going to Pittsburgh, you know, Clough going to the Kings. And I think it's going to affect because what we saw last year, Vancouver versus LA, was LA playing very, very physical hockey. And I think that's how, if the Sharks want to win this series, they're going to have to play physical. And with a lot of their physical guys gone, I gotta believe the speed and quickness of the Vancouver Canucks will take over. And hey, what can you say about the Sharks? They've been chokers through the playoffs the last couple of years. Of course, can't trust the Sharks. At least I cannot trust the Sharks. And I just think with the speed and quickness, with tough guys out of the lineup, for the Sharks. I gotta believe the Vancouver Canucks win this series. This will be an interesting series, but I think the Vancouver Canucks take this in 6 games. And our final series could be the best series of the Western Playoffs right here, as the number 4 seed St. Louis Blues taking on the number 5 seed and your defending Stanley Cup champions Los Angeles Kings. Start with St. Louis. Going into the year, I really believed in St. Louis. I thought they would be a very, very good team. Could contend for a Stanley Cup. Up and down season. Very inconsistent this year. You know, a lot of their star players like Oshie, very consistent this year. They're a very scrappy team, it seems like. You know, of course, last year, I think they were number, 2 seed. Of course, they fall down to number 4 seed. You know, St. Louis Blues, a very scrappy team that get it done with hard-nosed play, great defense, and solid goaltending, and just chip enough goals in just to win games. And that's how St. Louis has played. Of course, how they played last year, and that didn't get them as far as I thought they would go, or as they thought they would go, and losing in the second round to this very same Kings team. And I don't think much has changed with this team. They seem to be the same team they were last year, and you're playing a team, Los Angeles Kings, who, surprise, surprise, have to start the series on the road. I don't think it will faze them because, you know, they were number 8 seed last year and won the whole damn thing. And I think the Los Angeles Kings, yeah, they got off to a slow start, but I don't think it really mattered because at the end of the day, they're still in the playoffs. And what they say, just make it and you got a chance. I really believe the Los Angeles Kings have a chance. Basically bringing back almost the whole team. You know, Jonathan Quick is now starting to look like Jonathan Quick. And I just think with the experience of last year, you know, LA starting as 18, going all the way to the Stanley Cup, and even being the same St. Louis Blues team who, like I said, hasn't really changed their game at all. And I believe the Los Angeles Kings will do it again, as they will beat the St. Louis Blues. Not expecting a long series here, and I think this will get over in five games. I'll say 5 games, the Kings in 5. Which will be one more than was last year, of course. The Kings sweeping the St. Louis Blues. But I think the Los Angeles Kings, with the experience and knowing how to beat St. Louis, I think we'll get it done again. And the Los Angeles Kings beat the St. Louis Blues. Well, that was interesting. It should be interesting. Of course, my next video will be previewing the Eastern Conference. Of course, at this time, we don't know what the matchups are going to be yet. But I think Eastern's going to be good because you got a lot of new teams to dance. You know, the Maple Leafs returning, the Islanders returning. You know, so it should be interesting. But till next time, I'm Aaron Ducks saying I'm Ducks, and I know sports, kind of.